Hey everybody, Andre Vignier here with the Oregonian and Oregon Live, your beer writer, coming to you from Widmer Brothers Brewing. And I'm sitting here with Kurt Widmer, who I'm sure you all know. He's a legend, he's a co-founder. Those early days of you and your brother, just kind of starting in Northwest Portland, moved over here. What was that like? Just the two of you?
Oh, no. I mean, from day one, family was involved. My dad was critical piece of. Did you see pictures of the original brew?
Yeah.
Okay, it was junk.
Yeah. It was an old dairy thing for your mash tun?
It was dairy junk, and it was our Whirlpool was a shrimp cooker from the coast somewhere, and you probably know part of the story. A couple of the heavy-duty tanks, including our kettle hot water tank, were built for the never licensed Pebble Springs nuclear power plant. We got those out of a junkyard, and that was just one of those things. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than smart, but we got to know a couple of the junkyard guys.
Yeah.
Rob and I love to go to junkyards, and they separate out scrap that has just scrap value, and then scrap that has other value.
Utility value.
Utility value, exactly. And so we were looking at these tanks, and he said, yeah, you know, those were probably, they're all X-rayed nuclear grade welds on those are probably, you know, $500,000 each, and
Yeah.
I'll sell them to you for scrap.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you ever name a beer after the old nuclear tanks?
You know, people, when they would hear that they were from a nuclear power plant, we'd say, never got a license, these were virgin tanks, never used, but it never got beyond, they would hear nuclear power plant, so we downplayed that really quick.
This beer won't kill you.
No, Rob and I don't glow in the dark. We always, you know, would complain to our dad, of course in jest.
Of course.
Why couldn't you have been wealthy? I mean, we wouldn't have to deal with this pile of junk.
Right.
But he was so great. I mean, he was one of those self-taught mechanical engineers, you know. I mean, and could, old farm boy, Depression era, and Rob and I would literally haul in a piece of junk and say, this is what we wanted to do, Dad.
Yeah.
And he'd say, okay, I got it. You know, and
That's
days
pretty
later, it would work, and it would be bulletproof. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, that brewery was, you know, I mean, anyhow, it all worked.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. So the list of accomplishments for Widmer is lengthy. There's the brew pub law. You're one of the founding breweries of Beervana. There's the legendary Hefe, which is essentially the sessionable beer before there were sessionable beers.
Yep.
You guys created the idea of seasonable rotations. You're part of the group that started the Oregon Brewers Festival. You're the largest draft-only brewery in the Western Hemisphere for a period.
We were.
Yeah.
Second only to Guinness and Cork.
Yeah, that's pretty good company. So what do you hope Widmer's legacy is in 10, 20, 50 years?
You know, I think that people will recognize, they already do, our commitment to just brewing high-quality beer.
Yeah.
And be perfectly willing to experiment and also to dump stuff that we're not proud of. You know?
Yeah.
People come down here, they see this beautiful brewery, you know. We actually made pretty good beer with junk, but only pretty good.
Yeah.
And now we make what I think is excellent beer, but we've got first-class people and first-class equipment to do it. So.
And that's part of what your innovation lab is all about, continuing that legacy.
They're responsible for continuing the legacy of high quality, but also experimentation.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the great things about craft is that there's no hard, fast rules.
Right.
You know, I mean, I can remember when people were throwing candy bars into beer, and at first people were appalled, and then it was like, well, why wouldn't you do that? You
Right.
know?
Right. Now they're throwing peanut butter in.
Oh yeah. Right. So I think that's a great part of craft.
So if this were a State of the Union speech, what's the state of Widmer?
You know, we did recently close our pub. That was very difficult because it was kind of a place where I enjoyed eating and drinking personally.
Which is, for the record, where we're sitting right now.
Yeah, we're not going to tear it apart, and it's going to be available for nonprofits to use for fundraisers, and our brewery people use it for various purposes, and so it doesn't go away. But that was hard. But the brewery's doing great, and it continues to evolve. We're multiple partners now. It's not just Widmer Brothers,
Yeah.
and so I'm sure you've seen that. But that's been really a lot of fun, and those partnerships all came about because of personal relationships So that's been great.
Yeah, we've recently seen a few closings, setbacks for old Portland breweries.
Yeah.
You remember the first time you got a Bridgeport IPA?
I do. I can't tell you the exact time and place, but I remember we knew them. You know, we were a couple blocks away.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, we've known the Ponces and Carl since they started.
Yeah.
We've been through plateaus before. Mid-90s, there was another plateau. I think that it's pretty obvious. I mean, when we started, you know, Bridgeport, ourselves, Portland Brewing not too far out after that, had pubs. And now I think there's 110 in Portland alone.
Yeah.
So obviously increased competition.
Right.
And this location, it lent itself great to a brewery, but it's a destination. You don't get walking at this location. So anyhow, it originally intended, you know, years and years ago as a place where people could come and be introduced to our beers in the brewery. And meanwhile, I think people are pretty aware of craft industry and Widmer Brothers place in it and stuff like that. So it's not as critical, but you know, it was sad. You know, I like this place.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys are part of the Craft Brew Alliance with a few other breweries, Red Hook, Kona, minority owned by Anheuser-Busch InBev.
Yep.
Do you have any sense what's going to happen with that? They have an option to buy you out completely in August, right?
They do. That's their last opportunity to take a bite.
Or they stay at 32% or whatever they're at.
There's that option. And they can come in after that date too. They're not restricted to that specific date. But under the agreement, that's very public information. That's the last tranche.
Do you have any insight into what's going to happen?
No, and you know, I don't want to go to jail, so even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. But I don't have any. I wish I did.
Yeah.
I wish I did.
How do sort of old school breweries, Deschutes is still doing well. You guys, how do you survive the sort of culture now that Bridgeport has fallen to, or Portland Brewing, and how do you stay relevant in this market?
Yeah, it's a challenge. You know, it's a great question. I think you have to be committed to surprising and delighting and pleasing beer drinkers, and there's right now they're kind of one and done. I mean, they'll come in and have several beers from several breweries, you know, in one evening.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge is to be part of that set. It's pretty rare to find a craft drinker that is exclusively married to one beer and one beer style, or one brewery and one beer style.
Right.
They're promiscuous, I guess you would say. But
I was actually going to ask you about that. You know, the sort of the modern day beer drinker has a bit of ADHD, right? Where they're not loyal to a brand as like it was 20, 30 years ago. Where you're like, I'm a Widmer guy, or I'm a Portland Brewing guy, I love my Carnahans. It's got to be a challenge to sort of wrangle.
It's a huge challenge. I think the good news for us is we have accounts on-premise and off-premise that have been loyal Widmer Brothers accounts for 30 years.
Yeah.
That's invaluable. I mean, we have a great relationship with these people, and we bend over backwards to make sure that they're taken care of, and they take care of us. And that's an advantage of having been around for a while. I think that you have credibility that a startup may not. We remember those startup days. We had no credibility, so we remember those days.
So you and Rob always worked really closely together. Is it difficult to be apart from your brother for the first time now that you're retired?
It is. You know, he was the best partner that you could ever hope to have, and we shared an office, a small office, and our desks faced each other, and so we you know, we're with each other every day for extended periods of time. So yeah, the answer to your question is it's I miss him.
Yeah.
But I mean, we see each other. We're going to have dinner in a couple of nights. He's getting ready to hopefully hike the Pacific Crest Trail. So
Heard about that.
yeah. So anyhow, we work closely together, and as he would say, that in the early days when we were working such long hours and under such arduous conditions, you know, there's not too many people that we would say to each other, see you in the morning, and know that person was going to be there at 4 a.m. to start another day, you know, so we were never looking over our shoulder like, is our partner going to just bail on it?
Yeah.
So, and that was critically important.